up, Steelers Nation? It's Tank and Mike for Steelers Chalk Talk. It is a foggy, ominous day here in Pittsburgh. You know, Mike, it would be a great setting for an AFC championship behind us in Acrisure Stadium this weekend. Not gonna happen. All of the eyes of the world this week. If you love football, this is your weekend. The NFC, the AFC. You know, Mike, there's not a lot to talk about with the Steelers right now.
Nope.
A lot about who the OC is going to be, what's going on, the big press conference about how there's going to be changes. Now, if you watch the show, you know I go nuts over the offensive line. It's been horrible since Mike Munchak left. Mike, I'm going to ask you a question. I think I know who your favorite coach was ever in the NFL. Who is it?
Are you talking position coach, head coach?
All time.
Oh, that's hard.
Guy with a mustache, looks like a walrus.
You're thinking Andy Reid then. Okay, Andy Reid. So,
why'd you like Coach Reid?
well, he's just very creative with the offense. It never gets stale, never gets stagnant.
Did you see them spin around last week?
He's constantly trying to remain one step ahead of the competition. And what he does a lot of times is he goes back and watches old films back from the 50s and 60s, because now it's kind of like a rotation. It's kind of like style. You look at the 80s style, then the 90s, the bright neons, and it kind of comes in rotations, the bell bottoms, and then eventually comes back in style again. So the football offensive wise, a lot of the you got to the spread game, but now all of a sudden these guys are going to the hybrid linebackers, these faster linebackers. So how do you combat that? You get back to the run game, you pound the football, and you got to be creative. Now they don't have the Tyreek Hill, the Chiefs, so now they got to get creative. They have Isaiah Pacheco, who runs extremely hard.
Great.
But they've become a more balanced team than they have in the past 5 years.
Okay, I like that. I like that assessment. What makes a good coach? I've asked this question to guys that played 8th grade football, high school football along the way. It could be baseball, wrestling. We all remember our great coaches like Mike did. He actually had a Rolodex to go through. You know what? Our bad coaches stick out with us too. I'm not going to go through my litany right now. There's one guy in particular. And Mike, I'm sure if I said, who's your worst coach ever, he's in there.
Well, you're not going to name...
No, but he's in there, right?
Coaches. Yeah, of course.
Why was he a bad coach?
A lot of times it's just, it's a little bit of stubbornness. It's my way or the highway. They don't know how to get their players to play for them, play for them. You look at Dan Campbell coming in with the Lions. He changed the culture. You got the team. And it's not fake with Dan Campbell. He's very passionate about it. The players can tell if it's fake or if it's true passion. And so that's why they are playing it the way they're playing. Coach Tomlin does a great job of motivating the men. However, he's more of a defensive mindset, and he can motivate the guys. However, he needs a guy offensive-wise that can kind of put those pieces together, be creative, and keep defenses off guard, and change a little, a couple wrinkles week to week. Be creative with the pieces you have. You got 2 running backs, Najee Harris and Warren. You've got Pickens. You've got Deontay Johnson. You've got Pat Freiermuth, who should be. He's extremely talented, but he should be touching the football a lot more, similar to the way Kittle, Kelsey, Laporta up in Detroit. You got to look at those guys, and you look at the even the teams that are left, the Final Four. You got Laporta for the Lions. You have Kittle for the Niners. You had Mark Andrews, who's coming back from injury, but Isaiah Likely even stepped into that role for them big, and then you have Travis Kelsey. So the tight ends are very good in the last Final Four teams. Pat Freiermuth has that talent. You got to get him involved in the offense.
So what I was going at was there's
good.
Were
you going at?
Yeah, well, no. You got to think through these things. There's good coaches, there's average coaches, and there's great coaches. One of them has his name on the Super Bowl trophy, a guy named Lombardi. As you assess the Steelers' offensive needs going into 2024, we keep hearing a lot. Something's got to change. Something's got, obviously. Now, I'm not going to go in like I always do about Todd Haley, Randy Fichtner, and Matt Canada. Those experiments have failed for the last 10 years. So, Mike, if we're going to reach out, and you went through, we're loaded at offensive talent,
yes,
skill positions. if Mike McMahon is head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, what are you looking for in an offensive coordinator who ain't your best buddy, ain't your friend from college, didn't matter that he stunk, but you wanted to give him a job anyway, or you hired within the organization because you're cheap and won't hire somebody. If I gave you a blank check as Steelers head coach, not who are you looking for, what are you looking for?
I'm looking for a guy that's creative, that has a little bit of a run game background. I know they've talked about Cliff Kingsbury coming back from the Arizona Cardinals and from the USC last year. He was an analyst and QB coach with USC last year, was the head coach of the Cardinals. But and I think he's a good coach. But if you look at their past and what they've done, yeah, they put up some points. However, he's more of a system type coach that was a disciple of Mike Leach, and which is typically more of a college style system.
Yes.
And then the next guy you hear they're looking about is the Carolina Panthers coach from this past offensive coordinator from this past season. And when you look at them, I don't know if that's the answer, because they was one of the bottom offenses in the league. Taking that look, I'm not sure. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna look to one of the younger guys that learned underneath Shanahan. And I'm not just saying not only Kyle Shanahan, but Mike Shanahan. You look what Mike Shanahan has done. He's got his son Cal. He has Sean McVay. He has Matt LaFleur.
The coaching.
He has Mike McDaniel. So when you look at that, okay, so you got Mike McDaniel down in Miami. You had Sean McVay in Los Angeles. You have Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. You have Matt LaFleur, who is in Green Bay. All four of those teams were in the playoffs this past year. Okay, the Rams started off ugly, but they found a way to get in, and now they're not there now. Mike McDaniel's in Miami. He was one of the most explosive offenses. Now they lost to the Chiefs, but my point is those guys are very creative offensive ways. Now they became head coaches. You got to go find a guy that maybe learned underneath them, that kind of has that, okay, how did this guy, coach think? How does Shanahan think? How does LaFleur think? How does McDaniel think and McVay? And how do they decide to design a game plan? How do they go in each week? A guy that's worked with them for 2, 3, 4 years and has been underneath them, well, that starts to rub off, okay? You start to realize that. You look at even Andy Reid. Andy Reid has a coaching tree. Went up against his, former coach last week, Sean McVay up in Buffalo, or not Sean McVay, I'm sorry, Sean McDermott up in Buffalo. He was a D guy underneath Andy Reid, and now all of a sudden he's going up against another former coach of his, John Harbaugh, this week of the Baltimore Ravens. That's a Andy Reid coaching tree. So these guys that are in the playoffs and that are doing well typically come from a tree of some sort. You got to go find one of those guys that have learned it, and then be willing to give them the reins to go, hey, this is what I need offensive-wise. This is what I want to do. These are the coaches I want. I want to bring this guy in to coach my O-line. I want to bring this guy in to coach my quarterbacks. I want to bring this guy in to coach my receivers. And you have to give him full reign, because I love Coach Tomlin. I love how he's a motivator, but he does stay away from the offensive side of the football a little bit, and he needs to give that power. He's got to give that power to the OC, but that OC's got to be comfortable in doing what he's doing.
One of them, and I agree with you, Mike, one of the most important things for you football wonks out there, the X's and O's people, Mike mentioned a word, and it's a huge word because it contrasts with another word. You mentioned a system coach, a coach that brings in his system, as opposed to what would be the word, a creative mind.
Yeah, so with the creative, the difference is a guy.
Huge difference. You just had a guy in there trying to run it off his failed system with Matt Canada, which was garbage.
So what you got is when you guys got
explain the difference between the system.
When you got a system coach, they learn the system. However, they stick to that system and they stay with it. They don't know how to adapt off of it.
Jet sweep.
When the curveball is thrown at you, when defenses start making adjustments, you have to have a guy that can look at it and be like, okay, this is what they're doing now. Let's get creative. Let's get bunch sets. Let's get motions. Hey, let's, instead of motion across the formation or short motion down in and come across, let's motion from inside and motion out with Tyreek Hill and have them on an explode motion. That way they can't double team them. There's things going on in the game that a lot of these guys are doing because they're getting creative. It's not because it's some of the stuff you haven't seen before. It might have been done years ago, but a lot of stuff you haven't seen that McDaniel, McVay, LaFleur, Shanahan, and even Ben Johnson in Detroit. A lot of these guys, you haven't seen this stuff. And even you go look at what the Ravens are doing. And with Todd Monken in Baltimore, with Lamar, they were running Greg Roman's system. There was more of a college style, but now they've evolved a little bit, got that passing game going a little bit better in Baltimore, which helps Lamar. And now he's not taking quite as many hits. He's still running, but it's kind of a gel, a transformation of multiple systems, and you have to be constantly being creative, disguising things, because if you just line up and play the way they do in the college game, you're gonna get dusty. You got to be creative with the tight ends. You look at Detroit 2 weeks ago against the Rams. They go goal line, it's 4th down, they come in heavy with 3 tight ends and extra linemen, and you're like, oh, they're gonna run it, then all of a sudden they shift and all 3 tight ends run out into a wide bunch. And now, because they brought in all these tight ends and the extra linemen,
it went the other way.
The defense brought in the heavy personnel defense. And the one thing that Detroit has is some tight ends that can not only block, but they can run routes. And you look at Laporta, so they shift them out wide. Now they got linebackers out there covering. Laporta runs a glance or a post route on the linebacker, and it was a gimme. It was 4th down and 3, and they're thinking, oh, we're 4th and 2, we're going to pound it. They shift into defense, and now all of a sudden Laporta catches in the back of the end zone. The linebacker can't cover him. So it's being creative, knowing your players' talents inside and out, and then constantly keeping the defense guessing. So you can have your system and you can come in with it, but you better to be productive in the NFL, you better be creative. You look at the 4 teams that are there now. Shanahan with the Niners.
Very creative.
You've got Dan Campbell, who allows Ben Johnson, who is probably the most sought-after head coach right now. He's very creative with the offense in Detroit. Then you've got Baltimore, and you've got Kansas City, okay?
Oh.
Todd Monken with the Ravens offense, Andy Reid with the Chiefs offense. Gone are the days of the 2000 Ravens when they had Trent Dilfer and they just, hey, let's just pound it.
Yep.
Let's rely on our defense.
Yep.
Let's not make any mistakes. You can go back to the Patriots when they won their first Super Bowl with Tom Brady. As a young quarterback, he didn't go out and do anything crazy. They said, hey, Tom, just don't lose the game for us, okay? You don't need to go out and win it. Just don't lose it. We're going to pound the rock. We're going to do certain things. So the Patriots had the defense when they first won their Super Bowl. The Ravens had their defense with Ray Lewis, with Trent Dilfer as the quarterback when they won their Super Bowl. Then you even go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Brad Johnson as the quarterback. Yeah. And they relied on Warren Sapp and that great defense with Tony Dungy. But they didn't do anything great offensive-wise. But gone are those days, because now the game is about scoring points. And yes, there's some great defenses. Baltimore has one of the best defense. San Fran has one of the best defense. Kansas City, not so much. Detroit, not so much. However, all 4 of those offenses are explosive. And Detroit's top 5 offense, San Fran is, Baltimore is, and Kansas City is. So you have to be able to control the football, be creative, score points, and control time of possession with that offense. And all 4 of those teams can run the football.
Control time of possession.
And they all can
convert
score,
third downs.
They can score like that, and they can, well, if you go back, if you really want to look into football, the number 1 stat between wins and losses is all first is turnover, takeover.
Yeah.
So not turn the ball over, take it away. Okay, that's the number 1 stat. Number 2 is third down conversions. Can you convert? And the way the game has gone now, but the way the game has gone, all these coaches are, the analytics are coming in. Everyone's going for it on 4th down now, or they're not afraid to anymore. You have to be aggressive. The old days were like, hey, let's punt it, let's rely on the defense. Now it's like, no.
Well,
it's too easy.
Our Coach Fazio punted on third down at Pitt once. The horrible call.
But that's gone. But what I'm saying now is the way the rules favor the offense now. You can't do certain things. You can't play as aggressive on defense. So now these offenses are like, hey, it's more beneficial for us to go for this And, if they don't get it, maybe we can hold them to a field goal.
Right. So, system coach like a Matt Canada as opposed to a creative coach. Mike explained it for you very well there. As the Steelers look at the offensive coordinator, and I'm not going to throw names out there, but it is hugely important that you don't get another college system coach. You get a creative guy that comes in, which Matt Canada never did, and says, what do I got to cook here? What do I got? I got 2 great running backs. He kept Jalen on the bench to start. I have 2 great wide receivers in Deontay, in George. All he could figure out to do with George to start the season was run him down the sideline and throw over the shoulder. Well, you're getting the point.
Well, and that's the thing. So when you look at offensive coordinators, and you look at the game of football, the one thing is college football is far closer to the high school game than it is to the NFL game. Those hashes make a big difference. High school is the widest. It kind of condenses the field for that boundary side, and even in college so much. But once you get to the NFL, everything is equal in the middle of the field. There's talent across the board. You can't hide guys here and there. The game is different, okay? It's just flat out different. You have to treat the players differently. They're grown men. You got to respect them.
So
but you
can we take a time out there?
But you got to keep rules. Hold on. But you got to keep rules. But my point is the offensive game is completely different. So if you're going to go out and find an offensive coordinator that's going to turn this thing around, I would strongly advise going for a guy that has been in the NFL for years as opposed to a guy that's been successful in college.
I agree with you. The reason I timed you out there, hold on. It's like I've been drinking at the bar. I do this all the time. Rule.
Treating guys like men.
Yeah, discipline. 3, 2, 1. The reason I timed Mike out there, and I agree with you. I mean, you're grown men. You better be at this point. You're a professional athlete. But the point is, and I'm going to harken back to the locker room after Kansas City with AB several years ago when Coach Tomlin joined in with the all-famous TikTok video we've seen now, and none of them should have been celebrating, in my opinion. The game was won on Boswell's foot. All athletes, all soldiers, all Cub Scouts, all Girl Scouts all children want discipline. People that are high achievers respond to and respect discipline. So, one of the problems, and you talked about that in the wide receiver room the last couple years, is the inmates running the asylum, the children running crazy. All great athletes want to be disciplined. All great fighters love to be disciplined by a good trainer. How important is it for Mike Tomlin to quit being friends with these guys and get a reign of a disciplinarian?
Well, I don't know about that because I think
I do. Look at the wide receiver room. He's dancing with AB, and then Boswell saved the game.
Well, here's the thing: when you win in the NFL, it's hard to win. So whether the kicker wins it, whether your corner intercepts one, a sack fumble, whether your quarterback, it doesn't matter. When you win. It's very tough to win.
Did you ever dance in the locker room, Mike?
You have to celebrate those
wins. Do the
wins.
funky chicken?
No, we didn't do the dancing in the locker room back then. However, no. So you got to be able to celebrate those wins, and it's good to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. I think, and behind closed doors, we don't know exactly the relationship that Coach Tomlin has with those players. However, I think the team handles itself pretty well, with the exception of the receiver room. And I think I'm not sure what the answer is.
Discipline.
But it started with AB.
Juju.
Then it went to Juju. Then it went to Claypool. Now you have a little Deontay and Pickens, and I love George Pickens. I love how he's aggressive.
I think he could be a Hall of Famer.
However,
I think he could be a Hall of Famer.
When you got guys unhappy and you're so-called losing the locker room. Now, again, Coach Tomlin's the head coach, and he's more of a defensive coach. So the offensive coordinator essentially lost the offensive side of the ball.
He lost everybody. Canada lost everybody.
But
Steely McBean was unhappy.
But ultimately, Coach Tomlin needs to come in and be like, no, we're fixing this. He does do a good job of keeping things in-house. And I think sometimes, I think it is, you know, the media tries to get involved, and sometimes, and that can be a little bit of a detriment.
Leave the media. The guys are morons, all of them.
So he does a good job of keeping things in-house. However, I think sometimes it's okay to let a little stuff out there and be like, listen, I'm not doing this anymore. This is how it's going to be. And I think if he were to do that, you might get a little bit of change in that room. That's the room you got to fix. Nothing else. Everything else is great. You got the defense going, playing well. You got TJ Watt. You got natural leaders, Mika Fitzpatrick. You got Cam Hayward. You've got a lot of guys over there. And honestly, offensive-wise, you got a lot of young guys, and the guys that are going to need to start to step up, it's probably going to be like a Freiermuth or a Najee Harris. They're going to have to step up and start controlling that locker room a little bit on the offensive side, or a coach needs to. Otherwise, it's going to get a little crazy.
All right, so a little long-winded, but we covered two things. Mike and I are adamant you've got to get somebody with some NFL experience that is not a system guy, but who's a creative guy. I'm adamant on discipline. The benefits, the results of discipline cannot be argued with. I'm going to close out this way. You know, one of the things that made Bill Belichick, and he had a great quarterback in Tom Brady, was this. When they entered that facility up in New England, every day, all of their cell phones went into storage for the day. If there was a family emergency, the call went to the offices and they got a hold of the player. There weren't no TikToking, there weren't no internet stuff. There was nothing but focus and discipline. All right, I'm Tank, he's Mike. Steelers Nation, enjoy AFC Championship weekend.